Hello, hello, hello. If you are on Facebook, welcome. If you are on YouTube, welcome. If you are on Instagram, welcome. Come on in. Let me know you're there by commenting. And I see a lot of people coming up on YouTube now, so welcome to you. Rosemary, hi, how are you? Okay, and the comments are just a little bit delayed. Hi, Brian. Hi, Shannon. On Facebook, so I'm trying to go in and out of the feed to make sure that I don't miss you. And hello, Instagram. We are going to talk about getting your garden started off right this year. We have 10 tips that are going to help you hopefully get started on a wonderful garden. This is my son Joshua. You guys remember him from a couple weeks back. He was here helping talk about paracord. So yep. Say hello.
Hi.
Okay, so I want to just go over a few housekeeping notes before we start, and that is welcome to the Self-Reliant Living Show. That is this show that you are watching. We are on Facebook Live, we are on YouTube Live, and we are on Instagram today. Most days or most weeks we're on Periscope, but not this week. We're still working that out. Periscope seems to be the one that is problematic. Then we are also on iTunes. So if you would like to listen to this show as a podcast, you can download this show on iTunes. Then you can also watch the replay at selfreliantlife.tv. And there you will find all of the show notes and all the links that we talk about, and then a summary of what we've talked about. We are live every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern and 10 a.m. Pacific. So if you want to go to the show notes for this particular show, you can go to selfreliantlife.tv/035, and that will take you exactly to the show notes for this show. And then the benefits, of course, for doing all of this live is so that you can watch at your convenience on the platform of your choice. Okay, so let me just go ahead and introduce myself. I am Jennifer Osich. I am the author of the Preparedness Planner series. I am one of the lead teachers at Self-Reliant School, where my husband and I teach growing, gardening, cooking and preserving skills through our membership and our blog. And then I'm also the host of this show, the Self-Reliant Living Show. And this is my son, Joshua, and he is going to help me today talk about and do some demonstrations about how to get your garden started off right. Okay, so I just want to make sure that I am seeing you guys. And let's see. No, there's no way I can monitor those kind of comments on Instagram, so I apologize for that, and I will work on figuring out how to monitor those better, because that's not nice. Okay, so I am just going to make sure that hi Sherry, that everything is up and running. We were having some problems getting on YouTube, but we are now scheduling YouTube, so hopefully you will get those notifications if you are subscribed on YouTube. So let me go ahead and start this week's show, and Joshua is going to talk about a few things, because I've got it highlighted here which parts he's going to talk about, which parts I'm going to talk about. And this one, the first thing you want to know when you're starting your garden, before you even do any planning or anything, the first thing you need to do is
know your zone.
And what is a zone?
So there's different zones across the country, and there's northern zones that are colder, and then there's southern zones, and they're each numbered. Here in Texas, we're in zone 5, right?
8.
8. Oh, I thought it was 8. 5. I always get the two confused.
Yes, and this is the U.S. DA zone, the hardiness zone. So you would want to go to their map, and we will put a link in the show notes. And then you would want to put in your zip code, and then it'll tell you what zone you are in. And this is so helpful, because when you are looking at seeds, or when you are, even just going to the nursery or something like that, there usually is some like a tag or information in the catalog, a seed catalog, about hardiness of whatever it is that you're going to plant, and you would need to know your zone so you would know whether that plant was going to grow for you or not. Almost all plants will grow anywhere. It's just a matter of how well. So you want to go ahead and set yourself up for success and know your zone so that you can plant a garden that's going to give you a big harvest. Okay. So,
and on the backs of seed packets, there's usually, you see these different colors across the country. These are the different zones that, these are the different zones. And it says on here, in each different zone when these seeds do well. So in the yellow zone, it does well from May to July. And then the blue one, it's April to July. So on the backs so that's helpful to know when you're planting your seeds, so you can know when these do well in your zone.
Yeah, so it's, if you're just going like to a nursery or to maybe a box store or something that doesn't have a description, you're not ordering out of a catalog, then yeah, you would really definitely want to look at the back of those seed packets for all that information. Okay, so that's number one. So that's tip number one. So we're doing 10 tips. Okay, so the second one is
grow native plants.
So why would you grow native plants? Because you can't eat all native plants, right? So why would you grow them?
But native plants, they naturally grow in the area that you're in. So they help the ecosystem. They grow a lot. They're easier to take care of because they naturally grow there. And they're also cheaper than native plants because you can get them a lot easier.
Right, so they are going to be easier to take care of because they're native to your area and they're going to help the ecosystem. So that's not all that you would plant, but you would definitely want to have some of the native plants in your area around you so that it will help with, like I said, the ecosystem. And then also they're going to be more drought resistant and they're not going to require as much care. So you would definitely want to look up the native plants in your area, and then they also have different benefits, and so you would want to research those and decide which ones would be better in your garden or your yard or your property. And we will put a link also to a place where you can go and put in your zip code, and then it will tell you a list of native plants that you can plant. Okay, so that was number 2. Number 3 is
know your average last frost date.
Yeah, so why would you want to know that?
Some plants can take a frost and some others can't. So if you know your last frost date, you're able to know when to plant those plants. For instance, like kale can take a frost, but some other plants, they'll just completely die if they take a frost. So kale you can plant before the frost, but other plants you can only plant after there's no chance of a frost.
Right, and we will also put a link in the show notes to where you can go and find out your last average frost date. Now, the thing is that it's an average, so it's not like a guarantee, right? Because we can predict the weather mostly, but not all the time. And so what I would recommend doing is to wait even a couple weeks after your date that is the average last frost. Unless you have a short growing season and you have something that you want to plant that is going to take longer to get it to harvest. And so in that case, what you could do is you could start indoors, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Or you could also have something like a greenhouse or a hoop house, but that would be in a place where you have a short growing season. So if you have a longer growing season, then I would just wait until a couple weeks after that date. Okay. So number 4 is plan. Plan out your garden. And I know it seems such like a simple thing, but I did not always used to do this, and I would just sort of, find seeds that I wanted to plant, and I would just plant them here and there and wherever. And so I wound up, I usually wound up with some stuff that I could harvest, but generally I wound up with a big mess. And so the thing is that you will get so much more out of your garden if you actually take the time to plan it out and plan what you want to grow and where you want it to grow on your property, because there are situations where some plants will do better in shade and then other plants need full sun. And you need to take a minute, especially if you are completely new to gardening, take a minute and sort of survey your property, your garden, your land, whatever you have, and figure out, okay, well, this area always gets full sun. So, that's some information you can use when you're planning out your garden. Or this other area gets some shade and some sun, so it's sort of, in the middle. So that information you're going to want to take as well. Another thing that you're going to want to do when you're sort of surveying your area is to look at low-lying areas where if it rains, where the water is pooling. So, and not that it would flood there, it just maybe takes a little bit longer for it to drain or whatever. Maybe it does flood. I mean, it just depends on where you are. So you need to know these things before you plan, and then when you're planning, then it's going to make it where you have a way more successful gardening. Okay, so you're going to need to, like I said, decide where to plant what, right? And then the next thing you're going to want to do, this is number 5, is get your seeds. So seeds are a very controversial subject these days. So let me just go through and talk about some seeds for a while. And in just a second, right now, I'm making sure I'm not missing anyone's comment because I love for you to comment. Okay, so Jody says she is in zone 5. So yeah, tell me what zone you're in. That's a great idea. I'd love to see what zones are represented. And then we have lots of people on YouTube. That is great. I'm so excited about that. Okay, so let me talk about seeds for just a minute. And there's a lot of terms going around, and there have been for a few years now. So the terms I'm talking about are conventional seeds, heirloom seeds, hybrid seeds, and GMO seeds. So what the heck is the difference between all of those seeds, and why should you care? Okay, so let's start with organic seeds. Did I say organic seeds? That's another one. Okay, so what's the difference between an organic seed and, say, just a conventional seed? Well, an organic seed was produced in an organic way. In other words, it didn't have any pesticide or herbicide or anything that was unnatural chemicals. Not to say that they wouldn't have a pesticide. It would if it was natural, but no chemicals or unnatural things were used to produce that seed. So that is an organic seed. Then a conventional seed is a seed that was produced in a way where conventional pesticides, herbicides, things like that were used to produce that seed. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, what's the, what really does it matter if I take my conventional seed and then raise it in an organic environment? And you definitely can do that, and I feel like that you need to do the best you can with what you have. So if that is what you have, if you have conventional raised seeds, then yeah, go ahead and put them in an organic garden, because that's better than raising them in a conventional way. But I want to encourage you to go ahead and look for organic seeds in the future. The seeds that you don't have yet, that you haven't purchased, go ahead and look for organic seeds, and they won't always be labeled organic. It doesn't mean that the seeds were not raised in an organic way. You have to really research that with the company that you're buying them from, because there are some companies that use organic methods, but they don't have an organic label. So there is that confusion. But the benefit to using organic seeds is that if you have a seed that was produced organically, it's going to be stronger and used to, so to speak, the environment of organic, right? It's going to, or an organic environment. It was raised that way, or produced that way, and so if you take it and raise it that way, it's going to do better for you, because it's that's its whole life cycle, right? So that's something to consider. Not to say that you should throw away your conventional seeds. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm saying that when you do purchase them, try to get as organic as possible, right? They were not always going to have a label. Do research and make sure that the company that you're buying them from uses organic methods. So because your seeds will do better, especially when you use organic methods. Okay, so another term is heirloom seeds. Now, heirloom seed could be raised or produced conventionally, or it could be produced organically. So heirloom seeds are seeds that you can raise whatever fruit, vegetable, then you can take that fruit or vegetable and harvest the seeds from it, and then take those seeds and plant them again the following year. So theoretically, you may only need to buy one packet of heirloom seeds your whole life, right? If everything goes perfectly. Usually it doesn't, so I'm not suggesting that, but that in theory you can just have really just one seed, right? And it can feed you for generations. Okay, so and that's a big advantage to having an heirloom seed. So that's the whole thing around heirloom seeds. And then you get the satisfaction of planting them the next year. That's something that you harvested, you grew, you produced those seeds. So that's a big sense of accomplishment and a big asset for your pocketbook, right? Okay, so that's what an heirloom seed is. Now, a hybrid seed, again, could be raised organically, or it could be raised or produced conventionally. So it's really independent of that. And what that is a seed that was cross-pollinated. So it has a little bit of the mama plant and a little bit of the daddy plant, and they're different plants. And so they are put together and they're called a hybrid seed. And usually the reason that, usually the reason that people do that is so that the plant is stronger and that it will withstand whatever challenge is in whatever area you're trying to plant that seed in. So if there's some that are resistant to disease, some that are resistant to different pests, and this is not GMO. This is something that is done by man usually, but it can also occur in nature. So it's not something that is strange or unnatural. It's a perfectly natural thing to have to do it, or to because like I said, sometimes it happens in nature. So it's not like a weird Frankenstein thing that you're doing to seeds, and they're perfectly fine to eat. And in a lot of cases, they're really better to start out with hybrid seeds so that you can get sort of the lay of the land. If you are a new gardener and you are not used to you're not used to the difference between heirloom and hybrid, if you had a choice and you're just starting out, I would actually recommend starting out with hybrid seeds, because they're going to do better for you in terms of they have been I don't want to say manufactured, they have been made, right, to produce the most, the best for you. The only thing about hybrid seeds is that it's not a good idea to harvest the seeds from those plants and then plant them the next year. Now, some people do, and some people have luck and all that, but it's not going to last for generations and generations like an heirloom seed would. Now, I am not saying anything against heirloom seeds. I think they're great, and a lot of those are hardy as well because they have, they've stood the test of time. So I'm not saying not to invest in those. I'm just trying to tell you the difference. And then my recommendation, if you're a new gardener, I would start out with the hybrid seeds. And like I said, it's a perfectly natural thing. It's not GMO. Hybrids are not GMOs, so don't worry about that. Okay, so going on to GMOs, let's talk about those for a little bit. Okay, so GMOs are something that you want to stay away from. And GMO stands for genetically modified organisms. Okay, so this is a scientific process. It does not occur in nature at all. It's in the laboratory, and scientists are messing with the genetics of the seed. And so that is something that you want to avoid at all costs. However, you're not going to really have a problem with that when you're looking for gardening seeds, because their GMO gardening seeds are not on the market as of this recording. Okay, so you're not going to have a problem with that. You will have a problem when you go to buy your food in the grocery store. That's a different situation, but they're not really on the market for home gardeners. So it's not really a concern. But I know there's a lot of confusion and a lot of people confuse GMOs and hybrids. So just clarification, like I said, nothing against heirloom seeds. I have some, I love them, and it's fun to harvest those seeds, but I just wanted to lay out the difference there so that you guys understand when you're looking for seeds, you know, because that's an investment. Seeds they're cheaper than going to buy groceries, but they're not nothing, right? They cost some money. All right, so that is the difference between the seeds, and you're going to want to get the best seeds that you can. I would prefer, if I were buying seeds, I would try and get organic and you know, heirloom or hybrid, depending on what the plant is and depending on your experience as a gardener. Okay, so after you get your seeds, the next thing you're going to want to do, this is number 6. So we're up to number 6. And that is to amend your soil. I'm going to check to see who is commenting here. I've got my notes. I've got all this stuff here. Okay. The next thing is you're going to want to amend your soil. And so I would recommend organic potting soil, but that could get expensive. So some other suggestions are to make your own compost. And you can do that really, really easily. You just need to get some brown material and some green material. And the difference between those, green material is like food scraps and things like that. And then brown materials like dry leaves, newspaper that has safe ink, those sorts of things. And then cardboard, yes, and put them together. And then you can make your own compost. And I really recommend doing that because it goes way faster than you think. I mean, it makes it where you're not wasting things. I love it when I have very minimal trash, right? And I can put my garden scraps or my kitchen scraps in the garden, and that just makes me feel really good that nothing is going to waste. Okay. And then another way that you could help amend your soil is to put mulch down. And that will help keep weeds out, and that will also help keep the moisture in. The only thing I have to say about mulch is that you want to be careful where it comes from, because some of the wood could have some fungus and things like that. So you just want to make sure before you purchase it, or you make it yourself, because you can make it if you have trees that you need to pull down or mulch. So just be sure that when you put it on your garden that it is disease and fungus free, because that could be a problem later on down the line. Okay, so number 7 is decide where to start your seeds. Okay, so that means decide whether you want to start them outside or inside. So, and Joshua is going to show you a couple of tricks to starting them inside. So if you start them inside, you're going to want to, I recommend using a growing rack. And you could just make a growing rack out of a shelf unit. We've done that. A long time ago when I first started, I put plants on all of my windowsills throughout my house, and that worked, and it was fine, but it was a lot of work because I had to keep, checking on them and making sure they were all watered and everything. So I can't tell you how great it is just to have them all in one location on a shelf unit. So I would definitely consider doing that. And then it just depends on the conditions in your house. If you have a really, really cold house, then you may need a heating mat. If you have a warm house, if you live in a warm climate, then you could just start them. We are in Texas, and so we just usually just start them. We don't require a heating mat here. And then the other tip I would give you for starting seeds indoors is to plant more than you need, because some seeds are not going to come up no matter what, right? And so if you plant more than you need, you're going to have enough. You can always give those extra plants to friends, or you can put them in your compost. And I hate to take a life away, once the seeds have sprouted and all that, but at the same time, it's way better than not having enough. So, okay, so Joshua is going to go ahead and he's going to show you how we start some of our seeds inside, and we use this really cool paper potter, right? And we do not have any newspaper at this moment, but we have some paper, and he's going to show you how to wrap that.
So there's two different sizes. There's a small one, and then there's a big one. So I'm just going to use the big one because I think it'd be easier to see. And so you can just take some paper. Like Mom said, we don't have any newspaper, so I'm just using.
Let me move this so you can see.
Some notebook paper. So all you have to do is you just take it's made out of wood, so you take the potter and you wrap the paper around it, just one sheet, like this. This may be a little too long. And then you take the bottom and you sort of fold it in. And then you can take the base here. It has, and then it has. So then you just squish the paper onto the base like this, and then you can pull out the potter, and you have a paper pot.
Yeah.
And so then you can just put dirt in it, plant your seeds, and papers will decompose, so you can just plant the whole thing in your garden like that.
Yeah, and we usually use newspaper. We just don't have any at this very moment. But yeah, you can put the whole thing in there. And I know it looks a little bit, I don't know, rickety, but it really does stay together. So it's once the dirt is in there, the soil is in there, it really does stay together. So I love those because you don't have to plant your plants in those plastic containers, and it just makes me feel a lot better about the environment, because those plastic containers, you might be able to reuse them, and I still do. It's not like I do this for everything. I do use some of the plastic containers, and you can reuse them, and I definitely do, but they do wear out. So it's just a few less things in the garbage, and so that makes me feel better. Okay. So the next thing that you can do if you're going to start your seeds indoors is, we have another thing to show you, and that is, if you do have older seeds, what you're going to want to do is a viability test. And what that means is, because just like I said before, not all of the seeds are going to come up. So you want to maybe avoid that, maybe not plant those, because that's wasting time, right? So what you can do to make sure, or to see if it's worth planting, especially if you have older seeds, and we've done this a lot because we have a lot of seeds from a lot of years ago. So what you need to do is you need to get some seeds and do what, Joshua? Show us what to do.
So it works best with, the example I have here is beans, because beans grow really fast, so it works best with beans for this example. But all I did was I took the bean seeds and I put them between two wet paper towels, and after a few days they'll start to sprout. If you can see this one here, this one's starting to sprout. The big ones haven't started to sprout, but this one, we have a few here. And then I have one I did a few that I started before this one, and these guys really need to be planted today, because they're
or yesterday
because they're growing everywhere. So the way you start this is, all you have to do.
You want to take that off and show us the roots and everything? Yeah. So yeah, because he was trying to start it just in time to show you guys exactly what you would be looking for. And this one was a little bit too soon. And that was a little bit too late. But this is what it's going to look like when they start sprouting. And you can see all of the roots and everything. And you would go ahead and actually plant these before they get to this stage. But you can see that this group of seeds is ready to go. They all came up. So the rest of that pack, you would be just fine to plant, and they would probably mostly all come up. And so what you can do here, because again, I hate wasting, so what you can do here is you can lift them up. If they don't come off of the paper towel, you can just cut around that and plant the paper towel as well. It's fine. It will do just fine in the ground like that, and then a paper towel will decompose. I have a friend and she recommended using coffee filters so that wouldn't happen. I haven't done that yet. I've always done it with a paper towel, but that would be a great experiment to try next time. But we just wanted to show you what they would look like, and that, we're going to go ahead and plant those, and you would plant them before they got to the stage. So,
because right now all the roots are all tangled up, and I'm gonna have a hard time getting them all separated.
Right.
So
before they got all tangled up and that big, you would want to go ahead and plant them. But those are doing really nice. And like I said, if the other packet, bowl, box, whatever you have of those particular seeds, will do just fine, and you're good to go with those. Okay, so now you're going to show us a trick to planting super duper small seeds.
Yeah.
For blind people like me.
So basil is a good example, because basil has tiny, tiny seeds. So let me just open this packet. Let's see if I can pour some. All right, so you can see that here, these are very tiny seeds. So it's very hard to pick them up with your fingers since they're so tiny. So there's a trick you can do with, all you need some water and a wooden skewer. Or you could even probably use a pencil.
Yeah, you could. You could use,
So I have a little bowl to pour some water in. So now you take the skewer, you dip it in the water to get it wet, and then you just touch one of the seeds. Wow, it may not work because this is on paper. There we go.
Yeah.
So now the seed is on the tip of the skewer, and now we can take it and just simply stick it in the dirt.
Yeah. So you'd probably want to do 2, but that saves you from dumping 5, 6, or 10 in there, and so that really works well. So I want to go back over this one more time, because I'm not sure if we went step by step. So what you would do is you would take your seeds that you want to test, and you would make sure that they were all the same type of seed, and then you would put them between 2 paper towels, and we use a spray bottle, and go ahead and keep them moist. You want to keep them wet, and what we do is we just cut a Ziploc bag down the edges so that air can get to it, because if you leave it all sealed, then it's going to mold. So you're just going to want to leave it wrapped enough where it keeps some of that moisture in there, and then twice a day, once a day, depending on where you live, what the humidity is, just go ahead and feel of it and make sure that it's moist. And if it's moist, you don't have to do anything, just put it back down and wait for them to sprout. If it's not moist, then you would just take a spray bottle and spray it. And so then you would just wait however long you're supposed to wait for that particular seed, and if they sprout, then you're good. If they do not, then you probably do not want to plant those seeds, and you could put them in the compost or discard them in another way. So Jody is asking, would pine needles work for your mulch? And yes, they would, because they're dried when they fall down anyway. So just that's nature's way of mulching. So yes, they definitely would. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to go over is consider going organic. If you're not organic, consider going organic, and you would do that. Why?
Because going organic, you don't use any chemical pesticides or chemical herbicides. You still can control the pests and the weeds, but with organic, you use natural pesticides and natural herbicides. Sometimes even you can use other insects to control the bad insects. And the reason you want to go organic is because it's healthier, because you don't use the chemical fertilizers or pesticides, and it works better and it's more sustainable. then because you don't have, because everything's natural. It's a balance between the
ecosystem.
The ecosystem.
Yeah.
I was looking for the word.
Yeah. So, and things will grow better for you. And I know that is hard to believe, but it will. Things will grow better for you if they're in a more natural state. If plants are in a more natural state, then they will grow better for you as time goes by, and it's just so much better for your soil. And you may get away with one season of really great harvest if you're using conventional methods, but over time, by and by, your soil is going to be depleted, and you're just not going to get the harvest that you did that first year, if you're able to get it even the first year. And so Joshua mentioned other insects, and I just want to mention that again, that you can use beneficial insects to help with the pests that you don't want. And it's fun to use beneficial insects, especially ladybugs. If you have children, it's just a wonderful thing to go out and release ladybugs.
You can get like a bag, or it's more like a net, and they're filled with like 2,000 ladybugs, and you can release them, and they like fly all over you.
It's wonderful. Yeah, it puts you in a wonderful mood too. It's just great. So okay, so like, what would be an herbicide that's organic that you would use?
One of the ones that I use is vinegar, just plain vinegar you would use in your kitchen. The only thing you have to be careful about with vinegar is vinegar will kill everything, every plant. So you have to only spray the weeds. You have to be careful. You can't spray everything. But it does work for, grass or any other weeds that you have, because it'll kill them. Yeah.
It will. Okay. And so, what if somebody is trying to go organic in their whole house and they're bothered by things like spiders in the house? What could they do?
Orange oil or diatomaceous earth works good for pest control in the house. Diatomaceous earth, it's a very fine powder, and you can lay it on the outside of your house, and it will deter the insects from coming inside. And orange oil is a liquid, so if you prefer to use a liquid in some places, you can use that, and it also smells really good because it's made out of oranges. So.
It does. It smells really good. And so if you're looking for diatomaceous earth, make sure that you get the feed grade and not what goes into a swimming pool, because it's not the same thing. You don't want to use that. Okay, so number 9, know your plant starting dates for what you're growing. Okay, so this goes back to knowing and planning out your garden, knowing your last frost date. Okay, so if you're going to plant something, not everything should be planted at the same time because of the frost date. So there's the weather to consider. And then, things like tomatoes and okra, they need to have full sun. And then, like Joshua was mentioning earlier, things like kale and some lettuces. Broccoli, they can take a little bit of the cold. So know what your seed starting dates are. Look at the back of the envelope, look at the description, and that will tell you the conditions under which you can plant your seeds. So that is really important to know, because if you go out and you plant everything at once, and you plant your tomatoes, your broccoli, and everything like that, and then you do have a night where it gets down to maybe freezing or a little bit below, a little bit above, it's not always consistent in every spot, and then you come back and your tomatoes are looking really, really, really bad. So you really want to be aware of the dates that you need to start your seeds. Okay, and then along those same lines, number 10 is you want to stagger your plants, because you don't want to have 1 week in August where everything is ripe, because no matter how good of a canner or dehydrator or food preservationist you are, it's going to be really, really hard to get everything put up or eaten or even given away in 1 week. So you don't want your harvest to just be 1 week and everything comes ripe at the same time. So you want to look again at the back of those seed packets, and you want to look at the description and the seed catalogs. And when you're planning out your garden, you want to make sure that your harvest is staggered, because you know, tomatoes take a long time to come to harvest, and then, you know, there's other things that don't take as long. So even if you're staggering the dates that you plant, it may be ripe at the same time. Everything might be ripe at the same time. So you want to stagger both the starting and the harvest. So you just want to look at that and plan all the way through. Okay, so that was 10, but Josh has a few more things that he wants to add. So it's like a bonus, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about some of the different gardening methods. And there's a ton of them out there. I'm just going to mention 4 of the most popular ones, and each one has its own advantages and disadvantages. Some of them are better if you want to better incorporate compost into your gardening, and some are better if you don't have a lot of room, and you still want to be able to grow food. So 2 of the ones that are good for incorporating compost into your garden are lasagna gardening and keyhole gardening. Lasagna gardening, you essentially create a lasagna where you take green material, then you put brown material, then you take green material, and you create 2 or 3 layers, and then you let it decompose before you plant your seeds. So you have a fresh layer of compost right on top of your garden. And then keyhole gardening uses a raised bed, and it's usually a circle, and then you have a slit cut out of it so it looks like a keyhole. And in the center, you have your compost pile. So you just throw your compost in, all your green material, brown material, and then it will flow down into the soil of the surrounding bed. And the slit is cut out so you can get to the center, the compost pile. And then if you don't have a lot of room, but you still want to grow food, hydroponics can be done with minimal amounts of room. And hydroponics is a little bit different because you don't use soil to grow plants. You actually use water. The plants, the seed will sit in sort of a grow medium, something that's neutral. It doesn't decompose, but it still holds moisture usually. And so the roots will go out and will just sit in the water. And you can actually, this way you can control the nutrients that you give it, because there's nutrients you can buy for different plants. So you add the nutrients to the water and the plants will grow like that. And there's a bunch of different setups you can build, and you can do it indoors. You don't have to do it outside. And yeah.
The keyhole garden I think is something that is really taking off in this country. They have done it overseas for quite a while, but it's really taking off here in this country. The more people I talk to who have tried it, the more in love that they are with this method. So if you're looking for something new to do in your garden, I would highly recommend starting that. A keyhole garden. I'll put a link in the show notes for you, so if for those that don't know what that is at all, we can get you to a place where you can learn more about it. Okay, so I wanted to check the comments again. So hi Misty, it's so good that you're here, and I'm getting a bunch of people on YouTube. So 1000 Art Lover, thank you for sharing your expertise and happiness. Thank you for being here. So that's wonderful. Okay, so Sherry is in Zone 5. She's in Wisconsin. So this is so great to hear from you guys. Like I said, this is my favorite time of week. I get to sit and visit with you guys, and it's just a wonderful time. So, okay, so Tracy's asking, how do you water your seedlings that are so tiny, like some of the herbs, without causing them to lay over? Okay. Oh, that's one thing we forgot to talk about. Okay, so when you plant your seeds, you want to keep the soil moist, not soaking wet, but moist. And so once they start to sprout, then you can lay off the water a little bit and let them be moist. You don't want them to dry out, but they don't have to be as wet as the seedlings, because you want the moisture when you're just trying to get something to sprout. Okay, so a trick for hardening off, which is something that you need to do if you're going to plant indoors. So what that means is you've got this whole gardening rack, right, with seedlings, they've all sprouted and you're all ready to go out to the garden, and so you're taking them out to the garden. Well, you can't just plant them right there and then, unfortunately, because you're taking these little baby plants and you're taking them outside to a new environment. So you have to do something that's called hardening off. In other words, you have to get them used to their environment. So you're going to take them out, right? And you're going to leave them outside on a sunny, wonderful, pleasant, great day. And you're going to leave them out there for a few hours. And then you're going to go get them and bring them back and put them back where they started. Okay, and so the next day you'll take them and do the same thing, and then maybe you'll leave them out there for another hour or so. And then you'll bring them back, put them back on the seed growing rack. Okay, so you'll do that for about a week or so, and eventually you can get where you can leave them overnight. Make sure it's not going to freeze though, because the roots are going to be above the ground. So make sure they're not going to freeze if you decide to leave them overnight. You can maybe not decide to do that and plant them, and then they'll have a better chance because at that point the roots will be underground. So, but Tracy's asking about what happens when you take them outside and it's a windy day. So, and that's a problem because the plants, the seedlings, aren't used to the environment. They're not used to wind and rain and all of the stuff that happens outside, right? So what you can do to get them used to the wind is to put a little fan on your seed growing rack and have that blowing, and that will get them used to wind, right? So that will get the seeds. You want to make sure that you've planted your seeds deep enough or shallow enough, depending on what the seeds are. So you make sure that you're mindful of that and read the directions again on the back of the seed packet, because that will tell you exactly how you should sow your seeds. But like I said, that is a little trick that if you put a fan up there, then you can get your seedlings used to wind blowing. And then if you use a mister, you can get them used to rain and that sort of thing. So that will help harden them off. So that's a great question, and something that I'm glad Tracy reminded me of, because I don't think we covered that.
While we're on the subject, if you're worried about when you water and the seedlings might fall over, because if you use a watering can, then you might accidentally flood the pot, and the seedlings might fall over. You can just use a spray bottle, because seedlings don't need a ton of water, and if you just gently spray them, that should help the seeds not to fall over and still get enough water.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so what I want to tell you about is, the first thing is, we won't be here next week. We are going to a conference, and so we will not be on next week, and we will be back the following week, which is, let me see the date here, that will be the 16th. So we'll be back on the 16th. So I wanted to just let you guys know that if you're looking for us next week, we will not be here. And then also I wanted to let you know about our gardening planner, because all of the stuff that we have been talking about, you seeds and planning out your growing season, planning out your garden. There's a bunch of different graphs that you can use in there, and then you can plan out your harvest. There's pages for that. There's also pages for journaling, because journaling from year to year really helps you get into the swing and get acclimated to where you are and how the weather is where you are, because trust me, even though you think you might know the weather, because I've lived where I live for many years, but when I started gardening, it was a whole different story. I had to figure that out all over again. And then that gardening planner comes with 2 bonuses. The first bonus is that it has all of our gardening blog posts in there, so that they're in an easy printable format, so you can just print them out and put them in the notebook if you would like. And it also comes with a companion planting guide. So that means that there are certain plants that do well together when you plant them together, and that's a chart that you could hang up in your garage or your shed or wherever, and then you could have that reference there. So I just wanted to give you a reminder of that. And you could go to selfreliantschool.com/garden planner for that if you are interested in learning more about that. Okay, so remember, being self-reliant is not about being selfish. It's not all about you. It's about taking care of the ones you love. And so you are taking care of yourself, rather, so you can take care of the ones you love and people around you. Take care until we talk again.